Okay, let's get started. After I was sold from Samuel Drillen, and after the life taken of the one who bought me, I was sold to the North Cavern. I served as a used diner. One night, this master came in and requested one of the diners to be with him for a week. She thought for a moment, like I was. I am really not sure what he wanted, actually. Anyway, he paid coin to have me stay at his compartment and serve him. The master was Paul. I would keep the compartment clean for him and be at his service if he needed me. This was the passing of about 3 year cycles. When he came into tray, I was taken to his compartment. I liked him. He made me feel special, as if I actually had an owner once again, one that cared for me as a courtesan and not just as property to gain coin from. Anyway, he told me one day that he was going to go and purchase me, and then I could remain at his compartment girl. He said he was going to gold collar me. However, when he took me back to the tavern and left, he did not return the next day to get me. When I asked the owner about it, he told me that was the affair of the free, and in so many words, I need not know what the free was doing. Need I only obey? As she spoke, she started to cry. Then one night, I was told I was to once again serve. I gathered the master was untruthful, and he really did not give coin for me, or else the owner would not have me to serve. So that night, I snuck out of the tavern and into the forest, where I found the gypsies. At first, they were going to take me back, then decided to keep me as a labor diner. After they found out I was good with a sword and could take care of myself, they allowed me to join. I returned to Trey at night and to the master's compartment. I really do not know why or what I was thinking. However, that is where I first got caught. He was out there and his guards captured me. With the help of Dinah, I escaped and rejoined up with another pack of gypsies, those that were not free and would not turn me in. Dinah is one of the gypsies that is now serving in the palace of Devar. That is the only thing I did not tell you. She told me. How did you learn to use a sword? I asked her. Samuel Derlin taught me. He also taught me hand to hand. She sighed. Paul made me feel as Samuel did, and I fell in love with him. And I thought he had been untruthful, so I told myself I hated him. However, last night he reminded me that I do not hate him, she said, and a smile came to her face. Then you were not all that wild, I told her. No, as you saying, I was running from love, not wanting to get caught by it. Not again. I loved Samuel, and they killed him. I did not want to fall in love again and be torn from it. You have got to cease running. You are not going to try and leave again, are you? I asked her. She shook her head no. He wants me. He said he would keep me, and he would still gold collar me, she told me. I felt a pressure on my heart as I looked to her. He said he knew Danny would not sell me, nor give me to him, she said. Do you want to be with Paul? I asked her. I am scared. I do not want to be hurt again. I am tired of the heartache and the disappointments, she said sincerely. I stood and placed my arms around her. We will see what time will bring, I told her. Danny and the others were gone for about 22 days. It was the 7th day of the week. Jolene, Sandy, and I with 3 others of the Thorntons of the cottage were sitting in the garden. I had been keeping Jolene with me. I did not fear she was going to try and leave, and I was taking no chances. I watched as the girls sitting with us jumped up and heeled, their heads to the ground. I turned and stood. I saw Danny, Paul, Mike, and Scott, along with Emmett and his friend Law, and Tony came into the garden. "Welcome home," I smiled. Jolene and Sandy then stood as well, and to their knees. "To me," I heard Tony say, and Sandy ran to him. Paul looked to me, then to Jolene. "I see you are still here," he told her. "Yes, master," she replied. He moved over to her and raised her to her feet. I watched as he held her and kissed her. "Did you say anything to Patsy?" he asked her. "You are serious?" I heard her question. As Danny and I and the others moved to the table, and they told the girls what they wanted, and the other 3 began to serve. "Jolene, I did not perjure myself to you. You still believe me not," he said, and he moved to sit and guided her to her knees before him. "Darling, can I give your sister away?" Danny said with a laugh. "Give my sister away? I already gave my best friend away, and now you want me to give my sister away," I teased. "Master, I do not want to be hurt again. I am actually happy. Please, what if you decide you don't want me?" she said to Paul. "Then I should not gold collar you," he replied. "Gold?" Jolene said, surprising. "Patsy, allow me to give her a gold collar," Paul said to me. Danny waited for me to answer. "She really does not belong to me." "Yes, Danny," I said. He smiled and leaned down, and with a key from his ring, he removed Jolene's collar, and I watched as he no sooner removed it, Paul replaced the platinum collar with a gold one. "You know you have the training of that collar to go through," Paul told Jolene. "I love you. I did not believe you really meant what you said," she said in disbelief. "Now believe me, you're mine, and you are with me, and this is where you will stay," he told her. It was second passing of the second sun when I walked into the tavern. I saw Mike, Laura, Emmett, Law, Emmy, Partina, Juanita, and Stockard. "Patsy, Patsy, come sing with us," Partina called to me, and I moved up on the stage. "What are we singing?" I asked. "Heartache Fool," Partina laughed. I laughed as that was a song about my famous Danny Lee. "We have a circle meeting. Do you mind working with the kids while we're gone?" Mike asked. I laughed. "Not at all," I told him. I then turned to my band. "All right, and a 1, 2, 3, I called, and they started to play, and the kids started to sing with me. That day I enjoyed playing with the kids. Emmy and Partina were funny. About 2 hours, all returned to Emmett, jumped down and over to Scott. "What father say?" Emmett asked. "Next meeting you are to join and enter the circle." Peter argued the fact, Scott said. "Peter argues with himself. One day he will wake up and see that if he cares more for our people instead of himself, he might, just might, receive the respect he wants," Emmett said. "Yes, and I am the king of Xandu," Law laughed. "You may be king of Xandu, however, Peter is never going to learn. He will get worse," Emmy said, and the kids sighed. "Perhaps when we get older, Peter will understand. Besides, E, you are a lot younger than he, and with more authority, or will have," Juanita said to Emmett. "Yes, Qual, look at the good side of all people. If it is not going to benefit Peter, then no go. One day he is going to benefit his self right off the throne, Emmett said. E, you should try and assist him, not badger him, Juanita told Emmett. Badger? He is the one that hits on me. Until I found out I could prevent it and also counter him, I never bothered him until he started me. Emmett complained to Juanita. Qua, he is right. Peter just do not like us, Emmy said and sat on the stage. We gonna sing or gossip about Peter? Partina asked. Laura laughed and moved up on stage with us and started to sing with the girls. I watched as Emmett and the others left. It was around 7 passing when Laura gathered the young girls and had them taken home, for the tavern would start to fill, and it was really no place for kids on the 6th day of the week. I sang a few songs and looked to the clock. It was 9 passing still. Danny and Mike had not returned. I could not help yet to wonder what was taking them so long. The next time I looked at the clock, it was 11 passing. I thought I was going over to the Circle Lodge and see if they were there. I excused myself from the stage and headed out the tavern. As I entered onto B Street, I saw Emmett, Law, and a few more of the young boys. I moved up on them, and they all looked to me. Emmett, what are you doing out so late? You need to be heading home, I told him. Patsy, really, Emmett said, as if surprised it was so late. Yes, it is past curfew, I told him. Yet, Patsy, 'tis only 9 passing. Curfew is not till 10 passing. Is someone changed it? Emmett said. Here I thought the clock had read 11. Perhaps I was the one needing sleep. All right, make sure you head home soon, I told them, and moved back to the tavern. When I entered, I saw Danny and the others. Patsy, did you tell E to get his arse home? He asked me. Why, it is only 9 passing, I told Danny. If so, what are you doing off stage? Danny asked, and I looked at the clock and looked at Danny. Your little brother, I started to say, and Hillman, Mike, and Scott started to laugh. Is good at making you do, say, and believe what he wants. Danny laughed, coming over to me and kissing my lips. Just do not listen to him. When he starts talking, I will teach you to block him. I could have slapped little Emmett, as they call him. I moved back on stage with Mike and Laura, and we continued to sing until the tavern closed. Okay, chapter 27. I was on stage as always. It was the 5th day of the week. I watched Danny and Scott come in, and Danny motioned for me. I finished the song. All right, all my good people, give me a few, and I will be back, I said, and moved off the stage and over to Danny. What is up? I asked him. We are not sure. Emmett and a few others were to go to Lordland, to the lodge there, and Father contacted Chris, who is the admiral of the lodge, and he said he had not seen them. They should have made it there by now. We have not heard from the guards, and Father is beside himself, Danny said. I almost wanted to cry. I had become very attached to Emmett. I looked to Danny. I want to come, I told him. I want to find Emmett. I was very worried, and if I remained here, I would get nothing done and would be going crazy. Patsy, we do not know what is going on. It may not be safe, he told me. Danny, please. If I do not, I will just worry. Will not be able to work. Please let me come. I pleaded, actually, with him. He sighed. All right, Patsy. However, first sign of trouble, you ride the opposite direction, he told me. I promise, I told him. I moved to the stage and motioned Karen off it. She come down to me. I need you to sing. I will be gone for a while. I need to leave. Just tell Tony I went with Danny. He will understand, I told her. Will do. See you later, she said, and moved back up on stage and started to speak to those there. Then, as we headed out, I heard her start to sing. We met Mike, Alex, and Paul at the gate of Atlantis, and we headed out between Sandul and Crescia, then heading to Loreland. Loreland is the main lodge of the Sultan. It is where the members of the circle go to become of the circle. Much like an education center, those that join the circle spend 90 days at Loreland. It took us 2 days to reach there. We did rest at the camp right before the area of Loreland and found the 6 guards that were to be with the boys. I did not understand this. They were asleep. When I find them, I'm going to strangle them, I heard Scott say. Should we wake them up? Mike asked. I watched as Scott sighed and moved over to the 6 men and placed his hand on each head, and they woke dazed and much confused. When they saw Scott and them, they bowed. Any idea where my little brother and sister and his friends are? He asked one. No, sir. We did not know they left. When did they leave? The one he spoke to said. Scott took a deep breath. Get back to Atlantis. Inform my father that his son and his son's friends placed you and your men in slumber, and that I will contact him when we find them, Scott said. They said nothing more and headed out of the camp. When we arrived at Loreland, we moved into the main lodge. The man stood from a desk and hurried over to us. Chris, any word? Danny asked. No, Your Highness. Not from the group. However, a few of the other children said they saw them on the other side of the Mystic River, Chris said. They are where? Scott said, and before I knew what had happened, my hand was grabbed and I was on my horse and following at a gallop. Our gallop came to an end in the area of Odin's Mountain. I watched as Danny and Scott jumped off their horses before they even halted and took off running up the mountain. I was not sure what was going on. I dismounted and moved closer to the mountain. I had never been at the base of this mountain. The energy I felt was very strong, almost overwhelming. I looked around as I watched Danny and Paul stand at the base and say Emmy, and saw Emmy and the 2 young boys set into the side. The 2 young boys were Cyrus and Maverick. Emmett, Law, get down here, I heard Danny say as he was going up the mountain. I would, Danny, however I stuck. The mountain went to keep me, Law called back. I looked and saw as Emmett was the farthest up the mountain. Louis Emmett Humbert, cease, Scott yelled as he ran after him up the mountain. Then I saw as Danny and Scott reached Emmett, both grabbed him by the arm and pulled him back. You little fool. What are you thinking? Scott yelled at him. I want to see what the Garden of Fruit looks like, Emmett said. You do not climb this mountain. Emmett, it is not safe, nor is this one bit funny, Scott said as they moved back down the mountain. I saw Scott move over to Law and place his hand on his shoulder. You have no business even thinking of going up this thing, Scott told Law, and he laughed and called out, I am free of the mountain, so the mountain does not want to keep me. So the mountain does not want to keep you, Maverick called back. Scott and Danny, then all the kids off the mountain and at the base of it. What were you thinking, Emmett? This mountain is not a place to play. Climb it, Louis Emmett, is not a game. I could sense that Scott was frightened. He was very scared, and he grabbed Emmett and embraced him. Please, Emmett, do not do this again. Promise me you will not. If you are not favored, your life will be forfeit. Do you understand me? Scott said, filled with worry. Let me breathe a little. Damn, Scott. I am not dead, and I only was going to the garden, Emmett said. If you had made it, I could not have assisted you, Scott said. Yes, you could have. Emmy spoke up, saying, Emmy, Scott said, in a warning, Scott, you and Emmett are both of Odin's favor, as you are the first and the last sons of the chosen high priest. You have to cross the pond of life to start the quest to the mountain. After the cross, you may not turn back. Emmy said, and I had no idea what she spoke of. Emily, we do not know that for certain. No one does. I lost my place because the video is stopping. Emmy, we do not know that for certain. No one does. It is also said, once enter the garden, there is no turning back. Scott said, let us just get to Loreland and contact Dad. Mike said as he also moved to the Emmett and rubbed his head. Then as if Emmett just saw me, he smiled. Patsy, what are you doing here? He asked. I had to see you were safe, I said, relieved he was not harmed, he or Law. I had to try and help find my two troublemakers, I laughed. The mountain almost kept me, Law said, and I laughed at him and moved over, giving a hug, and also Emmett. We then walked with the kids back to Loreland. After contacting Lewis, who was our high priest, Danny's father, we traveled back to Atlantis. The years passed, and Emmett did not try again to climb Odin's mountain. I really do not understand the mountain and the millennium. I knew it was the turn of the high priest. This I did not truly understand. It had been 1 year from when Emmett had completed his classes, and it was time for Partina to complete. Then the following first day of the week, Emmett and Partina were to be married. It was the year of 79, a week before the class of 79 would complete classes. We were at the Atlantis Park. It was Danny, Scott, Mike, Paul, Tony, also Laura, Jolene, and Sandy. 21 full cycles to go, Tony said. Yes, and I am not sure what will happen, Scott said. What will happen is you are going to climb that mountain, Mike said. Michael, I climb that mountain, and Father will be high priest a third time. Scott said, and I looked to him, then to Danny. What is he talking about? I asked him. It was said that if your heart is not in the right place, then you will fail, and when you fail climbing the mountain, your life is forfeit, Danny said. I became worried for Scott. Danny, is that so? I asked. All I know is our older brother, at the start of the 17th millennium, it is said, started up the mountain and was found without life at the base of it. Therefore, our father served another millennium, and instead of it being the 17th millennium, it became the 16th second term of the 16th high priest. Danny explained. Scott, why do you think you will not make it? I asked. Because if I have to climb that mountain, it will be for I have no choice. Not for reason I want to. Because I do not want the reign of the throne, Scott sighed. What happens if none of you climb it? I asked. We do not know. It has never been done. Scott, if in fact it comes down to it, I will climb the mountain, Paul said. No, I heard Jolene say to him. He laughed. Jolene, I would return. I do not want to climb that mountain, however, I will, if means giving Father the rest he deserves and our people their guide. I would do it for our people and for my father, so I would make it, Paul said. That means if Paul climbs the mountain, Jolene will be the high priestess, Danny said with a laugh. Jolene's eyes widened. I will pray every day for the next 21 years that this does not happen, she said, and we all laughed. Scott, you're the only one of us that does not have a significant other, Mike pointed out. True, because I knew if I climbed the mountain I would not return, and if by chance I do, most of my wives will be children. This seems like a funny thing, he said sarcastically at his expense, and others laughed. We will see what happens, Scott said. Emmett has already tried to climb it, I said with a laugh. Yes, Emmett is something else. However, Emmett is still very young. Father would not go for it, and will insist I climb, Scott said. Scott, if in fact he does, I will go instead, Paul said. Look, it is 10 years from now. We need not even worry about it. No one is climbing it as we speak, Lorelei said and sighed. Next year, the gates of Hell Dangerous opens and the rotation actually starts, Scott said again with a sigh. I sat there still not understanding the whole millennium thing. I was glad Danny did not offer to climb that mountain. I'm sorry it stopped, but I'm going to continue to read. Chapter 28. It had been a month after the class of 79. Granted, it was the third day of the week, 6th month. I was in the studio at Valhalla with Partina and Juanita. Emily and Laura prepared a recording disc. Danny and the others were up in the consolation room with their father. You going on tour with us next week? I asked Emmy. Tour? Me? No way. You are not going to get me to sing live. I will do the recordings. If I miss a note here, we cannot just delete it and start again. I miss one on stage. Or if I miss a note, we can just delete it and start again. I miss one on stage, and there is no way to turn back time and redo it, she said, and Partina started to laugh. Actually, we all started to laugh at her. Emmy, you are so silly, girlfriend, Partina told her. Silly or not, I am not going on no stage. Besides, I do not believe Father will allow any more royal tours as of right now until after the rotation of the millennium, as the circle needs to be in Atlantis. Emmy said, then we will have a performance in Atlantis only. Laura spoke up, saying, Emmy, you can sing with us in Atlantis, Juanita said. Nope. I will listen to you all sing and sing only on the recordings, she laughed. We continued to do the recordings and was finishing up when Danny and the others came into the room. Patsy, I am headed to the cottage. You are coming. Danny said. It seemed irritated. He is not happy, Emily said as Emmett moved into the sound room. Nope, he is not, Emmett confirmed what Emmy said, then kissed Partina. Yes, I am coming, I called to him. The high priest upset with him, I asked Emmett. Nope. Father did not say upset him. Father pissed his arse off, he smirked. I laughed and moved out of the sound room to Danny. Everything all right? I asked him. No, let's go home, he said, and I moved with him. We rode to the cottage. Not a word did we speak. Whatever Lewis had said did not sit good with him. This was obvious. It was Paul, Danny, and me. When we got to the cottage, we moved into the sitting room. Jolene smiled and moved over to Paul. As she got up on his lap. You will need to get your things together. We are going to be leaving. We're living at Devar from here on out, Paul told her. She looked to me, then back to Paul. May I ask why? She asked him. Because our father is an arse, Danny said, and moved, fixing him a drink. Patsy, you are going also, right? She asked me. No, Patsy is not going to Devar. To live in the palace, she would have to be a mate or property of an executive member, Paul answered. I sat there looking from Paul to Danny, then Jolene. I was not sure how to feel. Paul had been staying in the cottage with us, so that Joe and I were not separated. You will not be that far away. I am sure you can still come and visit, I told her with a reassuring smile. It will not be the same, she told me. I can leave you here if you want. However, Joey, I have no choice. Father said he wanted us all moved into Devar. ASAP, Paul said. I do not want to be away from you. Shall I pack now? Jolene asked, and Paul sighed. I do not understand the big deal in it all. We are here in Atlantis. What does it matter where in hell dangerous we live, as long as we are here? Paul said, because Father has no eyes or ears here or on our estates. No one is here to tell him when we have to shit, Danny said, and slung his glass into the fireplace. I jumped and looked at him. Danny, I said, surprised. It is the damn truth. Sometimes I really hate that man. I do not want to live at Devar, not with all of his informers about. He said, then looked to me. I do not want to leave you. So, Patsy Lee Sanders, will you marry me? He asked, and I blinked and looked to Jolene and Paul, then back to Danny. Danny, you know I would. However, I am branded, and you are an executive prince, I said. Concerned, for it was against decree for royalty to engage in matrimony with one that was pardoned from Thorntoncy. I am aware of this. The high priest can grant such. If he wants me in Devar, then he will have to grant me allowance to enter into matrimony with you, for I am not being apart from you, he said. Good luck. You know he will be out of the kingdom until the first of the new year, Paul told him. Yes, I know. When he gets back, I will speak with him, Danny said. So you going with us to Devar? Paul asked. No, I will be right here with Patsy until I can have her with me, he told Paul. Danny, you're going against Father's word, Paul seemed to warn him. That I am. He can deal with it, he said, and moved out of the room. I watched him leave and looked to Paul and Jolene. Your father will not allow it, I told Paul. I know, and so does he. He stood and placed Jolene to her feet. Go get things ready to be leaving. I am not butting heads with Father. I am not as brave as Danny, kitten, he told Jolene as she moved to stand. She nodded sadly and moved out of the room. I lost my place. It's somewhere here. It was the following year, 80. Louis had returned to find out he had another grandchild. Partina had transferred a little boy on the 15th. Louis was in his office with Emmett, Scott, and Mike, and then Danny, and I entered. We both moved to one knee as we entered in respect to our high priest. "Rise," I heard Louis say. "Father," Danny said, taking my hand. "Yes, want to explain why you were not in Devar with the rest of your team?" Louis asked Danny. "I do not want to be apart from Patsy. Father, permit me to take the hand of Patsy. Permit me to wed her," Danny said. "So this is why you have brought her to me. You had not before. It is good to meet you, Patsy Lee," Louis said, charming, and I smiled and curtsied. "It is good to meet you, Your Excellency," I replied. "Unfortunately, Danny, my answer is no," Louis said, as I knew he would. "No? Why not?" Danny asked. "Danny, you know very well as to why." "It is nothing against Patsy Lee. However, you know the decrees," Louis said. Decrees. I am so sick of hearing you speak of decrees. Decrees which do not even matter. Father, you permit Emmett to wed Partina, and her family is of the peasants," he said sternly and looked at Emmett. "No offense, little brother, I love Partina," Danny said and looked back to Louis as Emmett said nothing in response to him. "There is not a decree that states they may not have married. There is one that states one with a brand may not," Louis said. "Any and all decrees may be overlooked with the allowance of the high priest, as long as it is not that of Odin's decree. This is not a decree of Odin, Father. You can allow it," Danny said. "Daniel, I am not," Louis said. "Father, you're going to allow a decree to stand in the way of love and happiness. That is not what the decrees were designed for," Danny argued. "Father, I see no harm in allowing them to marry. They have lived together for the passing of 10 years as it is," Scott said, I believe trying to assist. "Yes, and I have overlooked that," Louis said. "Father, there is no degree against living together," Danny said, filled with anger. "It does not look very good, however, the people do expect it, and it is better than hearing them speak of the Hamburg gigolo," Louis said, as his anger matched Danny's. "Father, I will not be moving to Devar then," Danny said. "Daniel Leon, you are of the Saltarn Circle, and I wish all of you in Devar. For when Scott returns, he will have the Millennium members with him." "In the palace," Louis said. "Father, I climbed that mountain, I will not return. So it matters really not," Scott said. "Scott, we have been over this. You will return," Louis said. I stood there really out of place. I did not believe the high priest would have allowed us to marry. I really was not hurt by his words, as I expected them. Danny turned to me. "Go down to the gathering and await me," he told me with a stern voice and a much angered one. I felt a chill move down me with his order. He ordered me as if he owned me. Without a word, I turned from him and moved down to the gathering. I sat there feeling regretful for Danny. As Emmett moved into the room with me. "Danny will be a while," he and Father are arguing. "I volunteered to take you home, so want to come with me?" Emmett asked. I smiled to him and nodded. We rode to the cottage and entered the garden. He sat with me. I really feel bad for the two of you, Emmett said. Danny knows he cannot make me his wife. I told him and laughed. What's so funny? He asked. You know, ever since I was in Levels and heard him sing and watched him on stage, all I wanted to do was meet him and give myself to him. Then after I was free, I dreamed of marrying Danny Lee. Then when I found out he was Daniel Humberg, I knew that wish was now and could only be a dream. I never thought I would start to date him or even fall madly in love with him. Usually infatuations end, however, he would not let it. I will talk with him. We will be all right. He can live in Devar where our high priest needs him, and I here, I said. Good luck. Danny is hard-headed. And sometimes a bonehead also. He laughed, and the devil moved into the garden, and I stood looking to him. Thanks for bringing her home, E. Word is, Partina is screaming for you, Danny said. Then I had best get going, E said to Danny, then turned back to me. You know, I know how you feel. I know how it feels to love someone and not be able to have them for reason of decree. Perhaps one day those decrees will fade away or else get lost in the ancient library, Emmett said, all serious. Perhaps one day, I agreed. I knew he spoke of Juanita as he loved Juanita. However, by decree of the millennium, he could not have her. She was the first daughter of the king of Atlantis, and she was, by decree, promised to the millennium high priest, and only he could deny that decree. In other words, only if the millennium high priest says he does not wish to wed her, then she must wed him. Frankly, both situations were bad. However, such is the world we live on. And by the word of Odin, the first daughter of each king within the selection millennium is promised to the high priest, which was the first daughter of the kings, or the firstborn daughters of the ninth cycle of the millennium, which was what Juanita was. Emmett left, and I looked to Danny. I have a solution, I told him. What? I give up the throne? He laughed, as if jesting. No, you live in Devar, and I here, as it was before when we were here, and I was in my compartment. It would be no different, I told him. True. However, I do not want to be away from you, he said. Danny, please. Just give it a try, I told him. He nodded and pulled me into his arms.